4 years ago, I crossed the Pacific Ocean as a crew member on different sailing boats, going from Panama to the Marquesas Islands, French Polynesia, Tonga, Fiji, and eventually New Zealand. I knew nothing about sailing before. Now it is time to continue on my own boat. After having crewed myself on 8 different sailing boats across the Pacific Ocean and having a lot of boat friends who own boats and did the same or sailed all the way around the world, I think I have pretty much experience in what type of small blue water sailboat on a budget I would buy, which I'm actually doing right now. I'm in the Caribbean looking for a boat myself, and I wanted to make this video about my reasoning for what specific blue water sailboat I am looking for on a 10 to 15k budget. Now obviously when you're on an extreme budget like this, you don't have the choice of the world, but still in the choice I have there are big differences. So let me tell you in the next 6 chapters my reasoning behind the type of boat that I'm looking for. The size of the boat. When I started living on sailing boats, I always wanted to have a big boat, and now I've lived on sailing boats, I don't want to have a big boat anymore. The advantages of a big boat, where I'm actually technically 42 foot is in the sailing community a middle-sized boat, but I find 42 feet a big boat. The advantages of that size and higher is that you have more space, you can host more people, it is faster. The disadvantage is that with every feet that you go longer, it also gets like exponentially more expensive to repair. For an example, you have 2 heads. A head is a bathroom, so you know double the chance that one of them will break, and you have more electrical appliances on the boat. And also when you put your boat in a marina, like where this boat is, you pay per foot, so the longer your boat is, the more expensive it is per week or per month. And when you have to haul out your boat to put it on the hard, to give it a new bottom paint, you also pay per length of your boat, so everything just gets more expensive. So for me on my budget, I think the better question is how small is too small. And I'll give you a few examples of a few of my good friends. So I know a sailing couple, and they're actually 60 plus years old. I made a video about them one day, and they crossed the Pacific Ocean on a 25-foot boat without an engine. But I have to say, the man was a die-hard sailor. You have to have a lot of experience to do something like that. And you know, I'm an experienced crew member, I'm not an experienced boat owner, so I would not do the same. I think the biggest downfall for me from a boat under 30 foot, but especially under 28 foot, is that the room inside to stand up is not tall enough for my 6'1". And I have a camper van and I cannot stand up inside. It's a little bit annoying, but it's okay. You know, I can open the door, I can go out, and then I can just, you know, be on land. But on a boat, when you're just living on anchor and it rains, and every time I stand up and I have to walk like this and cook like this, I can see that getting a little frustrating at a certain moment. Then I have a friend of mine, he sailed around the world on a 28-foot Vancouver, and I asked him, like, would you do it again on that size? And he was like, well, it was perfect for me as a solo sailor. I wouldn't do it again because, you know, I just did it. But if I would continue, I did notice that to be on a boat with a girlfriend, it would be nice to have a little bit more space. And a little bit more space, you talk about 2 or 3 feet, makes a big difference. Like a boat with 25 foot to 28 foot is like a very big difference in size of boat. And also at 28 to a 30 or 32. So I crewed on a Pearson 323, a 32-foot Pearson, and I was on it with 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, which 5 was way too much. But it's all possible for a short amount of time. But it only had one room, the front of the boat, where you can lock the doors and have some privacy. And that was obviously where the owners were sleeping. So I was sleeping, well, on the couch. And which is fine for a short time, but I just felt like at a certain moment I lost all of my privacy, and because I never had any privacy, like I just need some privacy sometimes. And yeah, so for me that boat would be perfect in size, because I am only planning to do it with one other person, and I'm not planning to do it with more people. Yeah, temporarily, but not like in the long term. But like for you, it's a good question. Like, how many people do you want to have on the boat for a long term? Like, are you going to start a family or not? And if you look at small sized boats, there are 36 to 37 foot boats that have like, I'm talking about older boats, right? The newer boats have generally they build them wider, so they have a front cabin and a back cabin, but I will not be able to afford them. So on my budget, the older boats that have two cabins at the front and at the back, they're generally center cockpits. So when the steering wheel above the boat is like in the middle, and it's generally known that boats under 40 feet, older boats under 40 feet with a center cockpits, just don't go as smooth through the waves as when you have the cockpit at the back. And because again I am a beginning boat owner with a lot of crewing experience but not a lot of experience as a boat owner, I just prefer to choose for the maximum amount of safety above inside space. So for me, a boat between 30 and 34 foot would be ideal. If a 36, 37 would be offered for the right price, I'd consider it. But otherwise, I'd be totally happy with a 30 to 34. I'm in Nukuhiva and I met James. James is a young British guy and he was crossing the Pacific Ocean on a 42-foot Halberg Rassie. Nukuhiva is an island in the Marquesas Islands, and the Marquesas Islands, for me, was the first island group that I came to after crossing the Pacific from Panama to the Marquesas Islands, and it's a 30 to 40 day crossing depending on from where in the Americas you leave from and depending on how fast your boat is. For me, it was a 40-day crossing. For James, I believe it was also between 35 and 40 days. Anyway, so he starts to cross the Pacific solo, and after 3 days, his autopilot broke. His electric autopilot broke. And he's thinking like, should I go back? Should I continue? And he's like, no, I'll take the challenge and I continue. So he continues for 30 somewhat days of hand steering. So the reality looks like this. He's hand steering the whole day, literally the whole day, and then when he wants to go to sleep, he has to set the sails in a way that the boat slowly somewhat goes in the right direction, and then he sleeps a couple of hours, and the day after it's exactly the same. And this basically means that your 30-40 day crossing goes from a quite nice experience with some things breaking on the boat to now suddenly this tedious, difficult, exhausting experience. And let me explain about autopilots. Most boats have an electric autopilot, and many cruising boats also have a wind vane, which is like an auxiliary steering system that's on the back of the boat, and you can basically choose which one you use, but the one uses electricity and the other uses wind. So he didn't have that. So he comes to Nukuhiva, and I decide to take the challenge and to help him to get the boat from Nukuhiva to Tahiti, which is a 7-day sail. And how this went was he did 3 hours of hand steering, and then I did 3 hours of hand steering. He did 3 hours, I did 3 hours, and that like 24/7 for 7 days. And then he didn't have a bimini, so it was fully trying to cover myself up with like a t-shirt, and it was really hot. And this was like not a fun experience at all, and it just made me realize I will not cross an ocean without a wind vane. Now, when you buy a second-hand car, let's say a 15-year-old car, any car, it doesn't matter, but you have the choice between two similar cars, and the one has a tow bar and the other one doesn't. Now, the price between those two 15-year-old cars is maybe like what, like $100 difference, or they're probably even the same. But if you buy the car without the tow bar, and later you're like, it's actually quite nice to have a tow bar, so you have a garage put on a tow bar, you're gonna pay $1,000 to put on that tow bar. And that's the same with boating. Like if you buy a boat that already has a wind vane, it's not really too much difference with a boat that from the same year that doesn't have a wind vane. But if you're gonna put on that wind vane later on, it's gonna cost you at least $2,000. So yeah, that was a big life lesson. And also when I first started crewing, I crewed on an Amel 46, and the guy was making the boat ready in San Diego to go down with the Baja rally, not important, to Mexico. And he was working on it for 6 months, and I had time, so I decided to join him 2 months before the trip to help him with doing boat jobs to get the boat ready. I was pretty interested in that. And so with him, I drove to many shops like West Marine and other boat shops to buy cruising gear to get the boat ready for cruising. And I saw how incredible expensive cruising gear is. For an example, like an SSB long distance radio. You don't need it on a boat where you're doing day sails, but if you're crossing an ocean, you still don't need it, but it's damn handy. And all that little gear together, if you still have to buy that all, it still adds up to like quite a big substantial amount of money. So that's why, in my opinion, if you can find a boat that was already made ready for cruising, you're already gonna save a lot of money, and that is exactly what I am going to do. So what keel should you have under the boat? This is a Jeannot Sun Odyssey 42, and it's a production boat, and most production boats these days have fin keels. So today I want to talk about the difference between a fin keel and a full keel. So a fin keel, like under this boat, it's lighter, it's faster, it's easier to steer. So then why would you want a full keel? Well, a full keel is slower, it's more difficult to steer, but it's also just much stronger, and you're going to hit something. Especially me, I'm an experienced crew member, but I'm not an experienced boat owner, and I'm going to hit something with the bottom of the boat. Everybody does from time to time. And even example, Chris, the owner of this boat, he was somewhere in the middle of the Pacific, and he hit something pretty hard, and obviously with a fin keel you have a much bigger chance that you get substantial damage to the hull as with a full keel. So he had to hull out the boat, have it fixed, and then put it back in the water. And obviously this never happens at the right time, at the right place. So you might be in a country where it's very expensive to do this. So that easily adds up a few $1,000s. And this has happened to quite a lot of my friends who go around the world with boats that have fin keels. And for me, being on a budget, I prefer to make the smartest choice that is gonna in the future giving me the least amount of financial trouble, and that's why I prefer to go for a full keel. By the way, Chris, the owner of this boat, also said that if he would do it again, he would also go for a full keel. So what type of boat should you buy? So every boat I'm looking at on my budget will be 30 to 50 years old, and I like to use this list that I actually found on the internet. It's a list of 99 proven sailboats that in time have proven to be really strong ocean crossers, because that's where I am looking for a boat for. And also you can just choose the specific boat, and then on the bottom see what specific issues people had with that boat. So that's good to know when you go look at a boat. I look for one of these boats, and if I find another boat that has a lot of cruising gear and has a keel that I like, then I will also do some research on that boat. So where to buy a boat? Well, I don't know exactly what your situation is, but in my experience, everything depends on time and place, because during the corona in first world countries, everybody was buying boats and camper vans because they couldn't go on vacation to other countries. So the boats and camper vans were really expensive. But they were really cheap in third world countries, because there were a lot of first world country boat owners who had their boats in third world countries and couldn't get rid of it because nobody wanted to buy them. So it really depends on where you are. Like, also there are a lot of people who had the dream of going around the world, and they crossed their first ocean and they're like, I don't want this lifestyle, I'm done with that. And they try to sell their boat, but try to find somebody to buy your boat when it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So it all depends on time and place, and I cannot give you advice about your specific situation. Maybe you have a big garden where you can put a boat in your own garden in your country and then work on it. That might be really great for you. I am looking for a boat in the Caribbean because I think this is also a really good place right now to look for boats. The condition of the boat. So the boats I crewed on were all in a pretty good condition because they were all sailing around the world or sailing across the Pacific Ocean. But if I take an average of my experience compared to the experience of all my boat owner friends, then I would say the standing rigging, which are the metal ropes that hold the mast in place, that needs to be replaced about every 10 years, and that's an expensive job. So, you know, it would be ideal to buy a boat where that's been done within the last 5 or 6 years. Then the hull, the outside of the boat, needs to be repainted every 2 to 3 years. So if that's been done recently, it's a big plus because it's also an expensive job. Same as blisters, like cracks on the outside on the hull of the boat. Like small cracks are pretty easy to fix, but big ones can be pretty expensive to fix. So that's a good thing to look at. And the condition of the engine, because if you have to have somebody rebuild the engine, it's maybe $1,000 or $2,000, but if you have to actually replace the engine, it can be up to $10,000. So that's a pretty big thing to look at. For the rest, like sails and ropes, or you call them lines on a boat, and electronics, if you want, you can find cheap replacement parts for that. So these are all my personal opinions about what I think that is best for me, based on my personal experiences and the experiences of my boating friends. I'm not saying that this is the way or that this is the way that is best for you. Yeah, I hope that you learned something in this video, and if you have some good suggestions, please leave them in the comments and then I will add them in the description of this video. A big thanks to my patrons who make it possible for me to keep making these videos. If you'd like to become a patron too, check out the link.